Guys, Martin here bringing up Dragon Ball Z Dokkan Battle video. And so one of the big things that people have been thinking about when it comes to the upcoming 10th anniversary, and it kind of goes hand in hand with the highly anticipated and expected EZAs for these guys right here, the 7-year LRs, the Gods, and the Super Saiyan 4s. And something that I've talked about in previous videos and in streams and stuff is the fact that these guys are going to EZA, or at least, you know, we believe they are. And that's the precedent that's been set with the last couple of anniversaries. I still feel like there's a reason why maybe they won't, because these guys will be the first 200% leaders to get EZAs. There's still plenty of other units that need EZAs. Not that that would necessarily stop them, like they've shown now that they won't necessarily do units in order if they fit the theme of the celebration. But they've been EZAing the previous anniversary units for a while now. Everyone wants these guys to EZA. Everyone's expecting these guys to EZA. But the big question is, like, what are they going to do with their leader skills? And the reason for that is because, obviously, you know, with the new units coming out, the actual 10th anniversary headliners, who as yet unknown, are they going to have a new meta leader skill? Because with these guys already having 200% leads, it would be strange for them to get an EZA, have their leader skill go above 200%, for example, and then have the new headliners for the 10th anniversary not have that same leader skill, right? Like, for example, if these guys went up to having 180 and then plus 30, they're essentially now 210% leaders, and then that's what we would expect the new anniversary headliners to have as well, right? It wouldn't make sense for these guys to get EZAs, have a new level of leader skill, and then not have the actual headliners of the anniversary get that same buff. So obviously at this point, you know, there's no answer to that question. There's no real knowledge or no real evidence to be had as to whether or not they are going to raise the cap for the leader skill. But I thought the interesting thing would be to look back at the evolution of the leader skills over the years of Dokkan, because I've heard some people, we were discussing it a little bit on the stream earlier, and people were saying that like it's too early for the leader skill to change. There's definitely been some periods in Dokkan where the leader skill meta jumped quite quickly, and then other times where it stayed at the same sort of level for quite a long time. And the interesting thing is, for the current meta that we're in now with the 200% leads, just how long that has been going on, how long the meta was before, all that stuff. So I thought we'd compile that information here, go over some of it, a little bit of a walk down memory lane for Dokkan leader skills, and then maybe that will give us an idea of how close we are to getting another increase in leader skills. So back in the day, leader skills were generally pretty bad. I remember talking about like a lot of leader skills didn't even give key. I remember talking about, like, back when I started the game, one of the best leaders that I had for my ragtag group of units that I could throw together was like Physical Bardock Super Saiyan, who didn't even have a TUR at that point, and his leader skill was all types key +2. And back then that was a good leader skill, because then characters could actually get supers, right? Because I mean, Saiyan characters always been very heavy on the prepared for battle side, but depending on who you've got to work with, anyone that could give actual key to everybody else on the team was an absolute godsend back in the day. And leader skills were quite low. Leader skills were giving flat numbers, if anything. And then, of course, we saw with the first anniversary the release of STR Super Gogeta. And STR Super Gogeta leader skill was all types 3 key and then attack 3000. Now, bear in mind that at that point in the game, like, categories didn't exist. There was obviously nowhere near as many cards overall, but the synergy for putting together teams of a certain type were very difficult, right? Some of the characters were available where it would be like, you know, Full Power Frieza, where it's physical types 3 key and attack 3000. but then you could only run physical units on that team. And if you were a newer player starting out, it's not that many units in the game anyway. Free-to-play units back then, I mean, there weren't as many, not as many available, and not very good anyway. I mean, the same argument can be made for now, right? Free-to-play units are never as good. But this guy, the reason why he was such a game changer was because obviously this was the highest buff you could get from a leader skill at the time in the game, 3 key and 3000% attack, but he gave it to all units. So regardless of what event you were doing, regardless of what units you had, the ultimate friend to bring would be Gogeta because he had the best leader skill. And then obviously he was really good as well. 7,000 attack and then attacks effective against all types. That obviously sounds pretty bad now, but back then obviously this guy was absolutely killing it. And he was the best unit in the game. There's a reason why it still gets brought up now. People compare units that are crazy busted on release. People will say, like, was this guy as crazy on release as Gogeta? Because Gogeta was so good that it was literally people were just re-rolling their accounts to get him. Because I mean, the game had only been out for a year, bearing in mind where the game has now led on to. If you're someone who re-rolled to get Gogeta and kept your account from there onwards, you'd obviously still be at a very solid point today. But yeah, like, people wouldn't accept friend requests if you didn't have Gogeta set as your friend, because he was the only character that anybody wanted to use, because you could use him with any team. And he released for the first anniversary, funnily enough, a few days after the actual date, right? You can see the release for him is on the 4th of February. So he was the first anniversary character. Now, after that, I think Frieza did actually come out after him. They still needed to release some of the type 3000 attack and 3 key. But after him, there was a couple of other Dokkan Fests characters that, of course, have like easy A's now, like this STR Vegeta. His STR types attack 80%, so they started to move into percentages. I think the Tech Beerus, that obviously now has his super easy A, was just Tech types, attack 80%. And then, of course, we got our first free-to-play character that rivaled that leader skill a good few months later, right? The 5th of July, so just before Global's anniversary. That's when the first ever LR, the Prime Battle Goku, came out. Obviously, it was a huge grind, and back then it was a massive pain because you had to use the Super Strike units only. The stage cost 50 stamina to try and was actually quite hard. So it's not like you just, you know, had to sink stamina into it and then boom, you get your Goku. It was the fact that you could do the 50 stamina and then still die. And then if you were, you know, back then newer accounts, like, you might not have enough stamina to do it again without having to use a stone. Meat items didn't exist. So it'd be a case of like, I get to have my one go against Goku for the day, like when I wake up, and now it's like, now I have to wait another like 4 or 5 hours so I've got enough stamina so I can try it again. And then, of course, you could end up getting the, like, really low RNG, get, like, the 5 medal drop or something, right? And you needed 777 medals to get the LR. So they made it very difficult to get. And this was the only other time that that same level of leader skill was then available, was this LR Prime Battle Goku. Now, not long after that, we finally get to the first big shift in the meta. So bear in mind, we've gone from the first anniversary, so January of 2016, the first one that really bumped up to the next meta. What was, you know, all these metas kind of ended up having names, like people referred to them as like God leads and all this kind of stuff, right? So we ended up getting to the July 2016. So it's kind of funny that this is pretty much the date of like the global anniversary. So Global was getting Gogeta at this time. JP got AGL Super Vegito. And Super Vegito, AGL types, 3 key, HP, attack, and defense 70%. So it was a buff to all 3 stats, 70% rather than flat numbers. Units obviously started to end up getting percentages in their passive over flat numbers, apart from like free-to-play units and Prime Battle LRs for quite a long time, because they just are a significantly bigger increase when it's percentage based. So this guy came out and, you know, he was basically alongside Gogeta. You could argue about their individual performance, but alongside Gogeta, he was like the best unit in the game. Obviously with the counters, back then events weren't as hard. A lot of endgame events could still be like sealed. So this guy could just come out and just absolutely destroy enemy bosses with counters and everything. But his leader skill was the monotyping, 3 key, HP, attack, and defense 70%. Now, the interesting thing about this time in Dokkan, so this started from July 2016. And I think Gotenks, Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks might have come out next. But we also got, not long after this guy's release, the AGL Blue Kaioken Goku, who obviously in game is just named Super Saiyan Blue Goku. And he came out with a leader skill, AGL types HP attack and defense 100%. So not only did the percentage jump up by another 30%, and yeah, he came out in August 2016, and Vegito came out in July. So literally a month later, they released a leader that had a 30% higher leader skill. The major difference, obviously, as you can see, is that he doesn't give any ki. So if you ran double Kaioken Goku leads, then your team had no ki. And so things like support units, items like that would be very, very important. But it created the ability to make sort of like a melded hybrid team where you could run Vegito and then run Goku as a friend, or vice versa. So you were getting 170% in total, and you were getting 3 ki from the leader skill for Vegito. So they carried on doing this for all the typings. Every type got a type 3 ki 70%, and then a type no ki 100%. That carried on for quite some time throughout 2016 and into obviously 2017. And then we saw when we got to November, they dropped the physical Vegito Blue and the AGL Rose. And these guys were, obviously we're still kind of still a far cry away from categories fully being into the game, but we had a super class lead. 3 ki HP attack and defense 50%. Now bear in mind, we're in the meta of 70% leads, we've got some 100% leads, but going back to the reason why Gogeta was so crazy with his leader skill, allowing you to use it against for like all characters, these leader skills for Vegito and Rose, even though they were giving less ki, like they were giving less stats, 20% compared to the other monotyping 3 ki 70% leaders, they were for all super class or all extreme class. So even though someone like, let's say, Super Vegito would give 20% extra stats than Vegito Blue's team would allow you to run Super Vegito and Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks and Super Gogeta and all these other characters. So even though the percentage was slightly lower, these teams became like the most dominant teams in the game. The Vegito Blue team was ridiculously good, so was the AGL Rose team. So even though they had the slightly lower leader skill, it was that variation by allowing more units to be on the team other than just a single typing that made a really big impact. And then, funnily enough, like this meta before it, where we'd had the 70% leads and then the 100% leads with no ki, we also then saw at the end of 2016 the release of Int Sword of Hope Trunks and the Tech Fusion Zamasu. And these guys did a similar thing where they gave extra percentage compared to the Vegito and Rose, 70%, but they only gave 1 ki instead of 3. And again, this created the opportunity. Some of the best teams back then were running like a Vegito Blue lead and then a Trunks friend, or vice versa. So you had a 50 lead and a 70 lead and then 4 ki in total. And especially because the superclass team, you know, all these Saiyan characters with prepared for battle, all these fusions with Fused Fighter, Trunks was an Orb Changer. Like, with only 4 ki from the leader skill, this team could still handle very, very easily, like, not missing out on supers and stuff for these characters. So, bear in mind, we got to the end of 2016, and we've still got the highest leader skill percentage is only 100%, and that's with no ki. And so, of course, then we move into 2017, and that's when we get to the 2nd anniversary, and this is where we see the release of the STR Super Saiyan 4 Goku and the AGL Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta, and they bring with them the 3 ki and 120 meta. However, they split this and expanded it. Rather than just being all STR types, it was Super STR types, 3 ki 120, and Extreme 1 ki 50%. So you could still mix them if you wanted to, but now that you were leaning more towards super class only and STR. And so of course this gave them the ability to then release 10 more units, just like how in the previous meta we'd had the 70% and the 100% leads. We then had in this meta 10 separate units that were the 120 leads, the super or extreme for their specific typing. And this went on quite a while throughout 2017. We started to get summonable LRs from the 2nd anniversary onwards. characters like the Rose and Zamasu. I know Gohan came before them, and I think Broly had the same leader skill as well, where these guys would have a singular typing, 3 key, and 90%. So that put them above the 70% lead meta characters, but obviously a little below the 120 leaders. LRs have kind of always then followed this trend, or at least the yellow coin, until we started getting Dokkan Fest LRs. Always followed this trend of having lower leader skills than the current meta. Like even now we get yellow coin LRs. Now that we're firmly in the 170 lead meta, we still get these yellow coin LRs that only have like 150% leads, right? So summonable LRs that are not Dokkan Fests have always had a slightly lower than the main meta lead, like leader skills, right? So this went on throughout 2017 until we got for JP and Global, because of course the good old to be released shenanigans. We got to August 2017, the worldwide celebration, or it was still called the download celebration at that point. That saw the very first categories come into the game. So Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta and Omega Shenron came out. Gogeta with Fusion, Omega with Shadow Dragon Saga, and his lead was the category for 3 key, HP attack and defense 150%, and then tech types 3 key and 50%. So we then firmly moved into the categories, just like with when the release of Vegito Blue and Rose, you were no longer restricted to running characters of a specific typing, but now instead of choosing between Super and Extreme, you had to pick between these set categories, and this was their introduction into the game. Obviously Fusion was very good, but of course Fused Fighters didn't exist as a category back then. So of course remember, Fusion is a category that has Gotenks on it, it has Gogeta on it, but it does not have Vegito, does not have Kefla. It wasn't until they decided to add the Fused Fighters category later on and just put all the different types of fusion under one category that was a thing. But this team was still very, very good on release. I've talked many times about how I don't care about the to be released. I don't think it was a massive global L. I was actually just happy that this unit came out on global at the same time as JP, because I pulled him. And so at the time, even though we couldn't use his crazy leader skill, I was using him on that physical Vegito Blue team with the full super class team, and it was super fun. He was still one of the better units in the game despite not having the proper leader skill. But that was where we first moved into categories, and we moved up to 150%, and that was in August of 2017. Now fast forward only a little bit to September 2017, so literally the next month. This is when the next category leader came out, and this was the STR Ultimate Gohan, and as you can see, he has Hybrid Saiyans 3 key, HP and defense 170, and attack 130. So 20% less attack than the 150 leads that we just seen come out, but 20% more attack and defense. And then we would see this for a few of the category leads. These are like the next 3 that released in a row, basically. We got the Gohan, we got the Angel Frieza, who had HP 130 and attack and defense 170. Actually, I didn't bring up the other one, but basically all the category leads that came out after that had a combination of either 130, it was usually 130 and 2 170s. After a little while, we started getting characters that just had full 170 to all of them, but that was a very quick jump considering that we went from essentially the anniversary in July was giving us 120 leads. They started coming out throughout the year, and then we literally get to August and jump up to 150, and then literally the next month in September we jump up to 170. Now the 170 lead meta went on for a long time, so bear in mind this is September 2017, and then the first 200% leaders, at least for JP, because obviously remember with the global shenanigans we got a couple of 200% leaders come out on global before the anniversary because of like Majin Vegeta and Ginyu and stuff like that, right? But it wasn't until we got to the 7th anniversary and these guys in question that we started off the video at this point, right? It wasn't until we got to the 7th anniversary that these guys came out and they had the first 200% leader skills. Now they're still following the same trend where they have these categories that they're giving 170% to, but then they were given an extra 30% to another category that obviously would have some crossover with the other two, and then that means that certain characters would be getting a full 200% leader skill. But again, like that's January 2022, and we moved into this like characters having 170 leads in September 2017. So this is like, what, 4 years? We're going to talk about Glorio in a minute. That's like 4 years and 4 months, something like that we were in a meta where the only leader skills were 170%. So bear that in mind. That's almost 4.5 years. And we went from year 1, 170, to a few months later going up to, did I say 170? The all types 3 key 3000, going up to the 70% leads within a couple of months. Then we went 100% leader but with no key almost straight after that. Then the anniversary was when they brought out the 120 lead, so we went up by another 20% after another 4 to 5 months. And then in 2017 was where it really accelerated, because we went from the 120 to the first ever category with 150, straight into the next month a category with 170, and then 4.5 years until we got anything above 100. Well, I guess technically, I can't remember when they came out. There was the LR Goku and Frieza, when they came out, gave 177% to Reps of Universe 7, but they were the only character that they did that for. Obviously, they did it for the 7 memes for the Reps of Universe 7. That extra 7%, not exactly meta changing or anything. But yeah, almost 4.5 years with only 170 leads. And then we moved into the 7th anniversary. So bearing all of that in mind, now as we get ready to enter the 10th anniversary, 10 years of the game, it's been 3 years since the release of the gods and the Super Saiyan 4s. So the 200% meta has been in place for 3 years. The 170 meta was in place for almost 4.5. But the metas before that shifted and changed so quickly, even within the same year, that realistically at this point, I don't think we can really say that it's too early for the meta to increase again. Now, I did bring up his page there by accident. We were going to talk about Glorio. It started with Roshi, but we do have this new style now for 2 characters at least, Roshi and Glorio, where they give one category a full 200% lead. Obviously, I didn't mention Carnival LRs that started coming out after the 7th anniversary, who also have the full 200% leader skill, but obviously we're still not talking any percentage higher than 200. And we're seeing these units now that have a full 200%, which works well if it's like a smaller or more niche category, and then they still have a couple of categories that they're giving 170 and then the plus 32. So leader skills definitely are still evolving. I think we'll still see more Dokkan Fests released during the year that have this kind of leader skill, where it's one category getting 200 and then they still have the 170 and then 30 split. However, if we start getting, if the headliners for the 10th anniversary go above 200%, then I would kind of expect these guys to with their EZAs as well. Now, one thing I could see is that they could quite easily just make one of these categories that they're giving 172, maybe copy that Glorio format, right? Give one of these 200%. So imagine if these guys became Power Beyond Super Saiyan 200%, and then Movie Heroes 170 with an extra 30 to Kamehameha. So Movie Heroes characters would get 170, Movie Heroes Kamehameha characters would get 200, and all Power Beyond Super Saiyan characters would get 200. That would be crazy. The other thing that we've speculated about on streams before is maybe they add another category that they give a 30% to. That would be really interesting. That would change up their team build a little bit, and that could be quite fun. But yeah, when it comes down to will we go above 200% leader skills, I mean, it's been a good few years now that we've been in the 200% meta. What will the leader skill go up to? We've seen jumps in the past now. I mean, going through all of them, we went from 3000 attack to 70%. Then we went to 100 but with no key. Then we went to 120, 150, 170. So we've always kind of seen after the initial 70% bump, it's 20 to 30% increments. So could we potentially see 220 or even 230% leader skills during the 10th anniversary? Who knows? The one thing that I will say, if that does happen, that probably will trigger a 7th anniversary level power creep shift for the game, which I think a lot of people would not like. If you're running double 230% leads, teams are going to start getting up close to, if not over, 1 million HP, and then bosses are going to start hitting even harder, and we're going to have one of those meta resets like we saw with the 7th anniversary that a lot of people really did not appreciate. So we'll see how it goes. I think personally we will stay at the 200 level, and they'll either do some shenanigans. I mean, at the very bare minimum, they could just give these guys 4 key instead of 3, and that's it when it comes to their Easy A. Because realistically, as long as they're passive and they're like super attacks, like everything other than their leader skill, as long as their Easy A makes them an insanely busted unit, I don't really care too much about the leader skill. But I think we could quite comfortably stay in the 200% meta for a little while longer. But let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. Do you think going above 200% would be bad? If they do, how high do you think we should go? Let me know all your thoughts down below in the comment section. So that is going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Masked Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Check out the links down below, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.